Greetings and salutations. Thank you for lending an ear to the Voice of the Times this Tuesday, April 12, 2022. For today's editorial, Navigating Indo-Pacific's Perilous Political Waters. Meeting in Tokyo last week, the defense and foreign ministers of the Philippines and Japan agreed to pave the way for a reciprocal access agreement that could facilitate joint military exercises between their forces. The efforts to hammer out such a pact reflect the two countries' serious concerns over China's growing assertiveness and spreading its influence in the Indo-Pacific region. We will strengthen defense cooperation in light of the increasingly harsh security environment, Japanese Foreign Minister Yoshimasa Hayashi said, following the first 2+2 security talks between Hayashi, Japanese Defense Minister Nobuo Kishi, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr., and Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana. They agreed to work for a free and open Indo-Pacific and oppose unlawful maritime claims, militarization, coercive activities, and the threat or use of force in the South China Sea. The ministers did not mention China, but there is no second-guessing who they were referring to. The Philippines has long been fending off Chinese incursions into its territorial waters. Beijing routinely explains off the intrusions by saying that almost all of the South China Sea belongs to China. Japan, too, has a long history of maritime scrapes with China, particularly over the Senkaku Islands. A Philippine-Japan security treaty will mark a profound shift in Tokyo's security mindset. Japan's military has shed off its defensive stance that has been enshrined in its constitution, practically dictated by the United States after World War II, and taken on the role of a regional military force. We may soon see Balikatan-style exercises by Philippine and Japanese troops. More importantly, a mutual defense arrangement with Japan could help the Philippines to further modernize its military. Japan already had a similar 2+2 meeting with Indonesia, so Tokyo is clearly on what can be described as a charm offensive among Southeast Asian countries. Beijing, meanwhile, has not been sitting idly by and has launched its own charm offensive in the South Pacific, eyeing to strengthen trade and diplomatic links with Palau, Marshall Islands, and Micronesia. The three countries have close relationships with the US, all the more reason why China is most eager to establish a foothold there. At the same time, Beijing wants to tighten its economic partnership with the Philippines and other countries in Southeast Asia, where it already wields considerable influence. During the same week that Locsin and Lorenzana were meeting with their Japanese counterparts in Tokyo, President Rodrigo Duterte had a telephone summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, where they stressed the need to ramp up efforts to maintain peace, security, and stability in the South China Sea by exercising restraint, dissipating tensions, and working on a mutually agreeable framework for functional cooperation. During a virtual summit last November, Xi assured ASEAN leaders that Beijing is not a bully, and that China is and will always be a good neighbor, good friend, and good partner of ASEAN. At the same meeting, President Duterte called out Xi over the harassment by Chinese maritime vessels of an unarmed Philippine ship that was resupplying Philippine Marines on Ayungin Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. That incident was apparently swept under the rug during the phone summit last week, along with the Philippines' diplomatic protest in March over a Chinese Coast Guard vessel engaging in close-distance maneuvering with a Philippine Coast Guard ship near Bajo de Masinloc. The implications of last week's events will not be felt until after the May 9 elections, but they should provide the next administration an idea of the complexity of charting a course for the Philippines through the region's diplomatic straits. A security treaty with Japan is most welcome, but its parameters must be strictly defined. Will it mean intelligence sharing and the upgrading of our defensive capabilities? Perhaps joint patrols and reconnaissance to protect our borders? The changing dynamic in the Indo-Pacific also requires some deft tightrope walking. With China and the US locked in a struggle for economic and political dominance in the region, our next leaders must be flexible enough to adjust to the shifting tides, but at the same time be assertive in defending territory that is rightfully ours. And that's the editorial for Tuesday, April 12, 2022. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to our digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and listen to the Voice of the Times.